All right, so in this video, we're checking out the Diatone ROMA F1. It's another one of these ultra tiny, super nano micros. I think the trend is going to be continuing. So let's go over everything that comes in the package first, and then we'll talk about the drone. So you get a nice case here that Diatone has been shipping a lot of their stuff in lately. Mine did not come with any spare prop guards, but it might be because it's an early version. It just came with the prop guards that came on here, so hopefully they'll come with spares in the box for the customers. Get this like keychain thing. So I think maybe the idea is to hang the drone off of a keychain because it's so tiny. But yeah, kind of interesting they include that. And you get a bunch of documentation. So the flight stack in here is actually individual boards. So you have a flight controller, ESC, and video transmitter. And it's based off of the Mini MK 3.5. It's a 20 by 20 stack, which is surprising. It's an F405, so it's got a lot of UARTs, so it has a lot of capabilities. Kind of surprising they didn't go with 16 by 16, but I'm kind of thinking that manufacturers are moving away from the 16 by 16 because the ESCs are too small for basically can't handle crashing. I mean, you can fly fine just cruising around for a 16 by 16 ESC, but I think when you send a lot of voltage through a small tiny board like that with 4 ESCs, they tend to pop. So that's probably why they went with a 20 by 20. So this is the flight controller. As you can see, nice wiring diagram. And here's all the specs if you want to freeze the video and take a look at those. So a little card here for the video transmitter, and it comes locked, so all the ones that are in red are not functional until you unlock it. Here's the documentation on the ESCs. 20 by 20 board, 25 amps, bursting to 35 amps, only up to 4S, and it's BLLES it looks like. Okay, so here's the documentation on the video transmitter. It's the TX500. And it's like a half-size board, and I'll explain why it's a half-size board in a second here, but you can see here what's locked, and they do have instructions on how to unlock it right there. Basically press and hold the button for 5 seconds and that will unlock it. Alright, so this is the receiver that's on here, and you can see this is also a half-size board, and this is on the other side of the video transmitter. This is called the MSR receiver. This must be like a Diatone special. It's a FreeSky D16 receiver. They told me it is basically the same as an RXSR, so it has basically S-port telemetry and S-bus, and they said it should work the same as a XSSR receiver. So this version or this drone comes as a plug and play, or sorry, as a bind and fly, not a plug and play. So typically Diatone sends out their drones as plug and play. You have to add your own receiver. This one's going to be sold as a bind and fly with a receiver already installed, and it's probably because of the tiny size. Getting a receiver in here is probably not going to be that easy. Interestingly enough, they do include this receiver connection information here with the plugs for the flight controller. Possibly if you want to use other types of receivers, if you want to swap it out, so they included that as well. But now let's go ahead. Oh, and before I forget, here's the last bag. Extra battery strap, battery pad, some extra cables. I think this is for a receiver, extra screws, and a buzzer, which they never install. It's always included, but they never install it on any other drones. All right, so here is the F1. The camera is a RunCam Nano 2. The motors are the Toka branded, or Toka Mamba branded 1103 10,000 kV motors. So this is spec for 3S. They're recommending a 350 to 450 milliamp hour battery. 4-bladed gem fan props here. These are the 40 millimeter propellers. The bottom plate's about 2.5 millimeters, a little bit less than 2.5 millimeters thick. It's a single bottom plate dead cat design, it looks like. And it's kind of hard to see the stack there, but you can see the ESC board, flight controller board, and then there's a grounding pad or like a shield there to to, I guess, reduce the interference from the VTX and from the receiver. So you can see the VTX is here and the receiver is over here, the two half-size boards. They're running the receiver wires, you can see, down through these holes here in the front and on the bottom, and they have the antennas taped to the carbon here. So if you're facing the drone like this, obviously the carbon is going to be blocking the signal, so that's going to reduce your range if you're flying directly at yourself like this. Most of the people will be flying kind of at a lesser of an angle. I doubt you're going to be flying like this. It'd be interesting if you could even see anything. But yeah, probably if you're above yourself, you're going to still be able to see it. So basically, at certain angles, your signal might get lost and wind up by flying too far away. But as you can see here with the prop guards, this is kind of mostly intended for indoor use and kind of slower flying. You can fly pretty fast. I imagine your flight time will go up a little bit, maybe 15-20 seconds by removing the prop guards if you want to fly it outdoors and fly more like a racer. But then again, if you're flying it faster, then your flight time is going to be probably going down, more likely to go down than up, because you're flying more aggressively versus flying more calmly indoors. So while the prop guards may reduce your flight time indoors if you're flying very calmly, if you're going to fly it outdoors, you're going to be probably flying very aggressively. So I imagine you're going to get even less flight time flying aggressively outdoors. So something to keep in mind. They do say you can put the battery on top or on the bottom. I elected to put the battery on the bottom, and you do have to kind of get the receiver wires out of the way. I had some difficulties trying to get my battery on top here, because the way the battery, this wire here, the plug was routed to this little TPU part. I couldn't quite get the battery to sit in here, and there's not a lot of space on top, as you can see, without the battery being too long and getting in the way of the camera. So if you want to fly a bigger battery, which I think this can handle, a 450, and get more flight time, you can do that, but you're going to want to probably put the battery on the bottom instead of the top, because the longer 450s will probably get in the way of the camera and you won't be able to see. You could try and mount the battery sideways, but yeah, I didn't really investigate that too much, and you have to figure out a way to mount the battery strap if you're going to be doing it sideways like this. But yeah, if you do that, then you could do a 450 long battery sideways up on top. But putting it on the bottom is not a big deal. And I think it flies about the same as top, I would think. I'm not really sure where the best CG would be. I'm thinking it probably would still be on top, because you're closer to the prop line. But it didn't feel like it flew poorly with the battery on the bottom either. All right, so here's how much it weighs. Looks like about 73.9 grams. And then with the 3S350, it comes in about a little over 102 grams. All right, one last issue to note before I show you the flight footage is that the USB-C port there on the flight controller, which is nice that it's USB-C, and they do include a USB-C cable in the package, which I actually didn't show. I don't know actually sure what I did with it, but in any event, you can see it's blocked with the prop guards in place. So if you, obviously, when you first set it up, if it comes with the prop guards installed, you're going to either need a right angle adapter for this USB-C connection, or you're going to have to take the motors and prop guards off on this side here. So basically take off these 4 screws and these 4 screws and pop off the motors and just slide them to the side, and then you'll have access to the USB-C port. Then you can set up your modes and all that, basic drone setup. There'll be a link down in the video to basic drone setup video, and then also how to bind your receiver and all that stuff, and test all that on the bench. Obviously, with the prop guards not installed, if you elect to take them off and just fly without the prop guards, then this is not going to be a problem. You'll have access to the USB-C port, no issues. Also be aware that when you do switch out the prop guards, you do have to account for that extra space there and use the shorter screws that are included in the package. If you use the long screws in here, then you'll end up, possibly damaging the motor. There is a plastic nylon spacer there that might prevent the screws from going into the windings, but it doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that it'll protect it, because that is a longer screw, so it could go all the way through. So make sure that you use the shorter screws when you take the prop guard's off and when you remount the motor, so be aware of that. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. Here's the flight footage. Talk to you guys in the next one.